What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Swan Signal Live. I'm your host, Sam Callahan. I'm the senior analyst at swan.com, Bitcoin financial services company. Before we get started with this episode, I want to bring up one of our sponsors, Marathon Digital Holdings. Swan Signal Live is powered by that miner. It is the largest and most technologically advanced public miner in the world. Marathon's primary mission is to enhance the Bitcoin network by sustainably increasing the amount of hash rate. That helps Bitcoin become the world's most decentralized and secure monetary network. So check out Marathon Digital Holdings. The ticker is MARA. Also, PacificBitcoin.com. That is the festival that Swan puts on every year in beautiful Santa Monica. Right now, you can grab tickets. If you use the promo code SIGNAL, you can get 10% off. And if you pay with Bitcoin, you get an additional 21% off. That's 31% off. If you use those promos and pay with Bitcoin, go to pacificbitcoin.com to learn more about it. So today we have two special guests on the show. We're going to be talking about nation state adoption for Bitcoin around the world. And I can't think of any better guest to do that than André Loja, who is the founder of the Free Madeira initiative, as well as Samson Mow, the CEO of Jan3. So welcome to Swan Signal Live to both of you. Pleasure to talk with you today.
Good to be on, Sam.
Thank you, Sam. Good to be here.
Yeah, so there's a lot to talk about in terms of the nation state level. Like obviously, Andre, you have Bitcoin Atlantis coming around the corner, which is the conference in Madeira. There's a lot of great speakers coming there. I'm going to be there. I'm so excited for it. And then Samson, you're always around the globe talking to legislative bodies, politicians about Bitcoin adoption. So let's start with Madeira, because a couple of years ago, the Madeira president, Albuquerque, was at the Bitcoin conference. He met with Saylor. He talked about how Madeira was going to be embracing Bitcoin, and that I think the quote was, "Everything that is connected with Bitcoin is welcome in Madeira." The president was in the headlines recently for all the wrong reasons, but at the same time, that's not Bitcoin. That's just politics. But let's get your guys' thoughts on that, and maybe give the listeners a little background, whether that's Andre or Samson want to explain that. What's going on there?
So who wants to be the bearer of bad news? Andre, you?
I can go. I can go for it. So, yeah, the president was amazing for the last 2 years, supporting the initiative. As you were saying correctly, Samson brought him on stage in Bitcoin Miami 2022 when he announced to the world that Madeira was embracing Bitcoin. And so he did, and he supported our initiative, the Free Madeira project, since the beginning. It was good. We started the Free Madeira project in October, officially in October 2022, after that crazy week in Miami, and he went to Amsterdam after that as well, to announce the conference and what Free Madeira was doing. And yeah, unfortunately, last week it was bad news. He was involved in a I know as much as anyone else from the public news, but he had to step down because of some investigations going on with the favors with the mayor and some businessmen in Madeira for some contractor issues and developments, and he had to step down. And now it's a big mess. Of course, they are evaluating what to do if they're going to elections again, if they're going to get a replacement in the government. It's just going on. It's a big mess politically because he also had a parliamentary majority with one of the smaller parties, and now it's political discussions as it is. Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate, of course, and we're 1 month away from our Bitcoin Atlantis conference, and now we don't really know how the present participation is going to be. Although on our part, everything's good. We still have the tourism board helping us with a lot of stuff. And they're being very, very welcoming. His team, the government team, on the different sectors that we're dealing with, is still helping the conference and being amazing, actually. So it's all good. Unfortunately, personally for him, it's not looking well.
Yeah, thanks for that recap, Samson. Any thoughts or response, to what Andre was just talking about?
Yeah, well, it was a surprise, I think, for all of us. And it's unfortunate because President Albuquerque was a big supporter of Bitcoin adoption and pushing for that, and traveling to Bitcoin conferences and talking about Bitcoin. So it's quite sad. And I think this could be a politically motivated attack. I'm not sure, and I don't know if we'll ever know, but it was done in a very elaborate way with a lot of fanfare to kind of make a big deal of it when this investigation has been ongoing from 2012, as André was telling us earlier. So it could be politically motivated because of the elections coming up. And if you really want to go down the rabbit hole, it could be politically motivated because he's a European politician, head of state, head of autonomous region, pushing for Bitcoin adoption. And this is right before Atlantis conference. But as André said, I don't think this will affect anything to do with the conference. It might affect our ability to move forward more on nation state adoption, maybe some more recognition of Bitcoin, and that might set it back. But I think overall, if this movement, the Free Madeira movement, the Bitcoin adoption movement in Madeira is going to succeed, it cannot depend on just the president like moving it forward. And as André is saying, you have the Ministry of Tourism pushing it as well. So it's kind of it will show the resilience of the entire movement without the president's backing. Maybe the next president will back it or not, but it has to have its own legs.
Yeah, and let me add to that. We were very clear since the beginning. Also, even with the president, like it was not. It was never planned to be a political organization. We are an independent movement. He supported us as he supports other projects in Madeira because he had the goal, which is a very good goal in my view, to make the Madeira economy more resilient and not as dependent on tourism as it's historically been. He was pushing a lot for tech developments all over the island, inviting sea-related technology startups for a cluster in one area of Madeira. It was investing a lot in the Startup Madeira project. That one is from the government to attract startups, tech-related, not related to Bitcoin at all, and even health-related startups as well. So he basically wanted to put Madeira in the forefront of technological development and basically compete with the rest of the world. Now that Madeira is not, historically it was harder in an island in the sea, far away from everything. But now in a global digital world, he was trying to approach and make a difference there. And he saw Bitcoin as one other branch of that technological development, basically. So we wanted to support that, which we welcomed, of course, and we do welcome the most support that we can. But in the end, we are independent from any political parties whatsoever. So
yeah. Can I actually tug on that a little bit, because it is interesting what Samson was just saying, is specific, and thinking about how the EU is kind of thinking about launching a digital euro soon, and you have this one semi-autonomous region that's kind of pushing towards Bitcoin. If there was any kind of nefarious intention there to kind of come down on the president now, but maybe if the listeners aren't familiar with Madeira, what does even like a semi-autonomous region mean? Like, can we just talk a little bit about Madeira itself and why they're able to kind of do things a little bit like more independently?
Sure. So Madeira has a special status. The archipelago of Madeira, that is composed basically by two islands, the bigger island Madeira and the smaller one Porto Santo. And there's another archipelago called Azores, more to the northern part of the Atlantic Ocean, that is also a semi-autonomous region. So basically, they are on a special status. We have our own president, our own parliament, but we are not fully independent. So there's a whole set of laws that regulates that connection. And we have some powers in some stuff, and others are decided centrally, and we just have some leeway. For example, I can give some examples. For example, we cannot create a new tax, but we have a difference that we can apply on taxes for business and individuals in Madeira. Defense, for example, is a national matter, nationality. But then there are other factors like education and all other things, branches that the government has, that we have more flexibility to create our own adaptations or even our own laws.
Yes. Is it still, I think I read somewhere that the business tax is just 5% there. Is that still true? And then
that is That is on the International Business Center. So there's a
Gotcha.
small subset of companies that you have to, of course, respect other factors, investment, job creation, and so on, that you can apply and incorporate in Madeira for a tax reduced corporate tax, basically.
And then
But that's not the regular. All island companies don't integrate on the International Business Center. But even the how do I put it in English? The local companies, we have a corporate tax rate that is 30% less than the mainland of Portugal.
Gotcha. And then is there still like if you hold Bitcoin for a year, there's zero tax afterwards? Is that still the case? I heard like
Yes.
rumblings. Oh, that's great.
Yes. So Portugal was well, it was tax free for years because there was no law basically on over all of crypto. But they did introduce a law. I think it was in the beginning of last year. That wasn't bad at all. They regulated some things, but they did put the 1 year holding in place. So if you do keep it for 1 year, there's no taxes.
Well, that certainly is going to attract some Bitcoiners, I think, to the region. Samson, like this is maybe a risk that happens when you're trying to educate governments on Bitcoin, where the leader can be supportive and then do something else. So, how much of your efforts when you're talking to these politicians is kind of educating the entire as much people as possible? So like Andre, you said the tourism board's still on your side and things like that. So Samson, when you go into these governments, are you just trying to like orange pill as much people as possible instead of just focusing on say like a president or like the most leader, the people in the highest leadership positions?
Yeah, I would say we are definitely trying to orange pill as many people as possible. But more than that, it's about creating initiatives that can align incentives with Bitcoin. So, for example, it's the business center in Madeira and maybe tourism. We have to get them doing something, and then it can survive the absence of the president. In Suriname, we've been in discussions with the central bank, a number of state-owned companies, power companies, and we're trying to get them on board to doing something with Bitcoin in terms of mining, and even local villages that have some degree of autonomy as well. So it's really about getting as many of these kind of facets lined up in the direction of Bitcoin as possible, so that we can survive, these kind of setbacks where the president is no longer capable. And I think this also applies to El Salvador. So what we're trying to do at Jan3 is to get Bitcoin adoption at nation state level, but that means it has to really take root. It can't just be President Bukele or President Albuquerque saying rah rah rah, let's go Bitcoin, right? It has to succeed in the absence of some central leadership figure. I mean, it's all about being decentralized in the end, right? So I think it's a test, and the test for El Salvador is what happens after President Bukele's second term is up. Will it take root or will it regress? But this has always been a factor that we've been thinking about at Jan3, like how will this Bitcoin adoption initiative survive the test of time? And fortunately, we get to see it play out in Madeira sooner than later, and we can see if it progresses. But this is why I've always said we need both bottom up and top down, because top down, it can be removed. Bottom up, it's grassroots, it's more resilient, and it keeps the top down aspect in check, and it balances things out. So yeah, we're basically getting to see this thesis play out in real time in Madeira.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense in terms of the bottoms up adoption being more resilient. And let's talk about the Free Madeira initiative, because it's going to be like initiatives like what Andre started that is potentially going to drive Bitcoin adoption for decades and decades. So Andre, tell us about Free Madeira.
And I'm glad that you put the decades and decades on in the end of your sentence, because when I talk about the Free Madeira project, I always try to make people understand that this is a long-term project. And Samson was mentioning, and I agree, you cannot rely on one person, on one author for the Bitcoin adoption. This is basically trying to orange pill as many people as we can. And the Free Madeira project, the non-profit that is driving all of this, it's basically for that, with that goal in mind. So, and on we have many different plans. Bitcoin touches everything, but it starts with education, merchant adoption, the Bitcoin business hub, where the developments and the programs can work, and the meetups, and So it's and the energy talks with the public power company and other private stakeholders around the island, basically for that, to try to onboard as many people as we can, to try to educate as many people as you can, and pass on the message, and trying to make the local people, companies, government officials, understand how this technology can help an island like ours. But it's like the rest of the world. The adoption is still quite low. The understanding is even lower. And the pushing, the overall pushing is to increase the community and make it larger and larger and larger. And on that, we're succeeding a lot. We're bringing a lot of people here. The meetups have been quite successful. The merchant adoption has been crazy good. So, but it takes time, of course. And the conference is also a great way to let's say fasten up that approach, and that a great opportunity to create the buzz around it, so people get curious and approach and understand faster, I guess.
Acceleration,
Yes.
Bitcoin acceleration, right?
Yeah.
Before we get into Bitcoin Atlantis, like I definitely want to touch on that a ton, but Samson, like a lot of the nation state adoption that I've seen at least is kind of around Bitcoin mining, like in Oman and Bhutan. Do you see more interest around Bitcoin, the asset, or, Bitcoin's use in like the energy infrastructure when you're speaking to these governments, or is it just like a combination of both? Would love for you to expand on that.
Right. I would say it's a combination of both. So mining is a very powerful thing because it lets them monetize energy. And a lot of the poorer countries, developing countries, the countries in the global south have a lot of excess energy. They just can't tap into it. And historically, they are poor because they have no way to monetize that. Bitcoin gives them that opportunity to monetize those reserves, and they have a pressing need for that money to build basic infrastructure. So it's a really simple way for us to go in and say, well, you have hydropower, let's figure out how you can tap into that. Or you have methane, flare gas, blah, blah, blah. These are all things that they can reach very soon and see an economic impact of accessing that energy and money at this time. So I think for us, it's a really simple way to start that conversation, because we can talk about monetary theory and the benefits of deregulation of money and legal tender and all that, but that's far harder than saying, let's cap off this flare and mine some Bitcoin and you can build a hospital. It's just a simpler conversation to have.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of these countries have the same issues when it comes to stranded energy and just trying to make their grid more resilient. So it makes a lot of sense, and it's kind of exciting for them to actually be, hashing, not just like buying the asset and putting it on its balance sheet. Both are good, but to actually be, decentralizing the hash rate at the same time, that's exciting.
Yeah.
So Andre, let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin Atlantis, because I'm pumped. I'm going to be going there in like 4 weeks. I'm super excited. Samson, I think you're going to be there too, right?
Yeah, everyone's going still. I don't think anything has changed. So
No,
Sailor's
right?
going.
I know.
No, nothing changed on that regard.
So tell a little people about it if they're not familiar. I mean, the speaking list that you've gathered is impressive. I mean, besides, I have to say Pacific Bitcoin I get excited about, but this is the other conference that I've had circled on the calendar for a long time now. So
This
tell us
is
a
your
little bit
sister
about it.
conference. There's a Pacific and an Atlantic.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
There you go.
Someone must do the Indic Ocean now, like. But we're excited, and I'm very, very. My idea from start was to do a smaller thing, basically. I just wanted to bring the advisory board over for to continue the conversations with the government, the private stakeholders, do a smaller thing. But because I'm very fortunate to have this amazing advisory board, Samson included, and other people like Jeff Booth and Greg Foss and Larry Leopard and Troy Cross and Gigi and Max Hillebrand and so many others, Knut Van Holm, Daniel Prince, you name it. Because of this amazing advisory board, suddenly stuff got out of hand. So let's put it that way. And we started having confirmations of some high profile Bitcoiners, Jack Dorsey, Michael Saylor, Jack Mallers, and the sorts. And so I'm not the guy to stand still. And I decided, well, I'm fortunate enough to have all these people, agreeing to come to Madeira in the middle of the Atlantic. So let's do something properly well, and then let's do a big conference. Let's make a difference. And from day one, put Madeira in the map of Bitcoin conferences worldwide, basically. So yeah, we started planning for it, and we ended up with this amazing all week of activities, because it's not only the main venue, the main conference place. It's going to be a lot of satellite events, and we can go over some of them. We decided to do it in a stadium as well. Like, the venue is amazing.
Cool.
Very fortunate to have it. We have the best people around helping us. We can speak in more detail, but on the main stage, for example, we decided to do really deep conversations and not go, how shall I put it? So have real high end value conversations on stuff. It's going to be long panels and long keynotes about how Bitcoin and all that touches can help an island like ours. We have specific curators for the blogs. Preston Pish is curating one of the blogs. Jeff Boot as well. Daniel Prince, myself,
Nice.
Troy Cross, Alex Gladstein. We have an open source stage with we have 160 confirmed speakers now. So it's a full list of scheduling. We have the 3 workshop areas managed by the best people that we could partner with. My First Bitcoin is going to be here with us. Looking Glass, Amity Age. Ben Ark is going to be managing the workshop area. The hardware area with Allen Bits and MakerBits. BTC Sessions is going to be managing the workshop area. We're going to have a gallery, a art gallery. Fractal Encrypt is managing that. It's looking crazy good with the amount of artists that are going to exhibit there. We're going to have a stage of itself on the book corner. So a lot of book authors with us doing talks, doing signings, and amazing food court. Madeira is well known by the food, so we can do it lighter. So there'll be a lot of good options of food and drinks all around. We're going to have a gaming area. We're going to have a kids area, which we were very, very. I'm a father of 4, and I went to other conferences, and I thought it was something that was missing. And since the beginning, that we also wanted to make it. Since we're bringing people from all over the world to Madeira, well, let's make it. And Madeira is already a very cool touristic destination. Let's make it a vacation with the family. Bring the wives, bring the kids. So we created this all kids area where we separated in 2 different areas. One up to 6 years old, where you have nannies and activities and so on, and another one with the stage of itself as well, and a small tent where we're going to have workshops and games and talks and many activities. Coach Carbon is going to be here with us. Frankie, Josh from Scott and Mallory from Shamory. Roger 9000 doing chocolate workshops, and there's going to be table tennis tournaments.
All over that.
It's going to be crazy good, and there's and this is just the main venue with 3 full days of crazy good talks and people from all over the world coming together for a great networking opportunity, a great time, and also a great opportunity. That's the goal of F.R.E.E. Madeira in the end. A great opportunity to bring the locals, the ones that are curious, the ones that are pre-coiners, no coiners, shit coiners, whatever you want to call them, to come listen and get educated on how this amazing open source technology. And this is for me one of the big goals of the conference.
Yeah, I was actually gonna ask about the locals and if there's excitement around the community about Bitcoin Atlantis. I know there's a lot of FOMO in the Bitcoin community about it, and if you're still thinking about going, you can use promo code Signal, by the way, for a little discount. But I was going to ask about the community. If there's a lot of chatter about it, or if they just don't even know what's about to hit them. What's
Yeah,
like the sentiment on the ground?
it's a mix. There's a lot of, especially after COVID, a lot of nomads and expats living in Madeira. It's a very traditional place for the people come and stay for long periods or even live here. The community has been growing by the day, which is amazing to see. We also started projects, Free Madeira projects, related, the sovereign engineering project with Gigi and Pablo. Gigi and Pablo are living here now, and other Bitcoiners came to help the project. And they will do a presentation of this project at the conference, at the open source stage, and at the Rise of Atlantis VC pitch. That is one of the satellite events that is being managed by Martel Fox.
Nice.
So, and the locals itself, it's been surprising. Not only after we went public, there were a lot more Bitcoiners around us than I imagined. But people are chatting a lot about. It's crazy good, because a name like Jack Dorsey, for example, that resonates even for people who are not related to Bitcoin, brings a lot of attention, and we were fortunate to have him and other people around. And people are very curious. And one of the things I'm more curious to see actually at the conference is, I think a lot of them will be very, very surprised when the conversation starts inside the conference, because I think a lot of people are very far away from understanding what Bitcoin is, and I think some of them will probably go there expecting to see, or to listen to, where can I buy and when can I sell and how can I make money out of it? And they will be very surprised to see that it's all about the technology in the end. And there will probably won't be even any talks about the price, or we're getting all rich and getting Lambos, and so it's great. I think it's going to be great. There will be a lot of surprised locals, but I hopefully by the end of it they'll live with a totally different mindset on
Yeah.
the thing.
Hopefully it'll spark that bottom ups adoption that Samson was talking about.
Yes.
Samson, I actually want to talk to you a little bit. In the bear market, one benefit of all bear markets is there seems to be like a separation between Bitcoin and crypto. As people recognize that, there's actually Bitcoin and then there's everything else. And I feel like we've really seen that in the last 18 months or so. Have you seen that at the government level when you're speaking to these legislative bodies and politicians, where they're starting to kind of understand that there's Bitcoin, there's everything else?
Well, the problem is that everything else also reaches out too. So they always try to present themselves in the best light possible and say they're the next Bitcoin. So it gets difficult sometimes, but we just have to cut through that. And again, the best tool at our disposal is the ability to say you can mine Bitcoin and tap into your energy, because that's something that these other projects can't do, right? Since I don't know, like 2017, it's been moving away from the mineable altcoins into the push a button altcoins, where they just print it out of thin air like Ripple does. So it's a differentiator now, and I think that's their own fault. Like, they just gave up on proof of work as even a remotely legitimizing factor, and now it's just blatantly money printing. So we have that going for us, where we can just say, Bitcoin is the number one asset. The shift, I think, the big shift is the approval of the ETFs, because that is a big signal that we can give to the countries and say, well, yeah, you might not be sure about Bitcoin, but BlackRock, the largest asset manager on the planet now, has an ETF, and there's 9 other new ones, and they're pulling in billions of dollars right now. So maybe you can think about this Bitcoin thing a little bit. But it helps a lot. The whole environment is kind of poised towards ramping up Bitcoin adoption, and I think we'll see a lot more of that in 2024.
Yeah, I think last year I wrote a piece that was like 10 reasons to be bullish heading into 2023. And one of them was the fact that ETH moved to proof of stake. Like, I thought that was one of the most bullish developments of the year. And so Bitcoin's now the only like major proof of work network. And that's extremely bullish for the long-term, value proposition, in my opinion. But you brought up the ETFs, so let's just get into it, because you were extremely bullish right now, right? You think that we're headed into 6 digits. That's an imminent around the corner from these ETFs. You're kind of tweeting about how this is a huge deal. So you said 1 million Bitcoin, Omega candles. Let's get your thoughts around that. Right now people are a little disappointed, I think, of the short-term price action after these ETFs. Maybe they expected this to just go blast up right away, but you think that these GBTC outflows and that's all a distraction, right? So maybe let's summarize your views and for the listeners.
Well, you kind of put it in a summary already. So the problem, I think, is that we were encumbered by people trading GBTC for profit, and we don't know their motivations or how many of them there are, but it definitely feels like it's running out. So because of all the things SEC did, we didn't have approvals until now. And then you have Bitcoin locked into GBTC because they couldn't convert it to an ETF prior to the approval recently. So what happened was it was trading at a discount. So you have people trying to come in and arb that trade with the assumption that it will be converted. So you have a lot of capital that went into GBTC with the intention of just cashing out in fiat, not necessarily because they want a Bitcoin ETF or they want Bitcoin. So that had to get flushed out and converted. And also because GBTC has super high fees, people are also exiting if they can exit too. And I ran a calculation. I think if you're moving from GBTC at 1.5% into, pick one, Bitwise at 0.2, or even one of the ones at 0.25, you'll basically take a tax hit when you cash out of GBTC, but you'll recover in about 12 years' time. So if your plan is to hold anywhere longer than 12 years, it makes sense to take that tax hit and move because you'll benefit in the long run. So I think some of the flushing out of GBTC holdings and AUM is people that have done that same calculation and figured it out as well. So we have to kind of discount that because when you're looking at markets and you're looking at macro analysis, you have to disregard the noise. And GBTC is largely noise. It's in the words of someone I know, not my words, it's a cursed product from a cursed company. So you have to kind of get rid of that curse first before we get to see the real action. But if you can see past the noise, then the signal is there. And the signal is you have a massive amount of accumulation on all the new 9. IBIT and Fidelity FBTC, they're raking in about 200 to 175 million per day on average on every trading day. And if you calculate that in BTC terms, that's about roughly almost 9,000 coins, and we're producing 900 a day. So you can see that it's not sustainable, and there is going to be a supply crunch because you have this massive amount of demand. But I think people don't see that because they're not seeing the price go up immediately. But Bitcoin seems to surprise a lot of people. It moves very quickly, and it does go up very quickly too. In the past, we've seen 20x in 9 months, and I think with this new source of demand, you can easily 20x in weeks.
So 20x from these price levels in weeks, what kind of price levels are we thinking at? Like if you had to like put a number on that?
Well, 20x from, we're basically almost at 50K. So 20x 50K is $1 million, right?
Right.
And if we get to 100K, which I think is very possible, then it's just 10x to 1 million. So these movements are just normal Bitcoin doing business. So it's not crazy that we can see Omega candles of 100K and we can see Bitcoin go up to 1M.
That would be wild. That would be extremely wild. I mean, like when you look at the amount of coins available on exchanges, I do understand where you're coming from, in terms of this like multiplier effect, and that there's just not that much Bitcoin available, like straight up. And you have all these major firms now having to buy Bitcoin to keep their ETF products at NAV. And yeah, it's just like one part of the market too, but it's now a major factor of demand that's now entered the market, right? And André, I was curious, ETFs have like dominated the conversation in the United States. Is there a lot of chatter around where you are around these new products? And then maybe just get your thoughts overall on them. Do you think they're nonsense? Like what's your thoughts around them?
No, I think it was inevitable. It was, it was to come for a long time. Samson is right. It does. I don't know. What's the word?
Melt faces.
No, I was more like institutions now look at it differently. But personally, and for Madeira, I really not my thing. Even the price of Bitcoin. One thing I've learned for the last 3 years is not to expect anything out of the price of Bitcoin. It always surprises you when it goes down, when it goes up. I don't know. I don't care. I'm here for the long term, and on the long term, I'm very very bullish. I think it's gonna go way above the numbers, even the numbers that Samson is saying. We just don't know the exact time frame. But in the end, I think the most chatter that I've been listening to around me are actually the people who are not Bitcoiners. Yeah, some friends that I have that still deal with altcoins and or don't, or are just trying to see if they make an investment in Bitcoin. They were all, oh my God, the FTX are coming, so it's going to blow up and I'm going to make a lot of money. But in the end, this is the fiat mind, right? They are thinking about the dollar value of Bitcoin in the short term. So for me, it's indifferent, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, like it's we usually don't talk about price that much at Swan in general because we would rather focus on the technology. I mean, it took us a long time to even put up a price chart on our website because we didn't want people to think about the price so much. And Samson, you just tweeted something where you're like, looking at all these different indicators that are really close to all-time highs or that just trending upwards. Like it's up on the screen now with hash rates near all-time highs, debt to GDP ratios. What were you kind of meaning by this tweet? I'd be curious, and then break down some of the things that you listed here.
Yeah, so I was chatting with somebody, or someone commented on my post, and he's saying, what are the? I think I said all indicators are pointing in a very bullish direction, and he asked what indicators. So I just broke it down for him and wrote down all those different things. But this is really what I look at when I'm trying to figure out where Bitcoin is going, and all of those things are going up. Hash rate is going through the roof, and I think you guys are contributing to some of that, right? With your new
Swan
mining, right? So it's your fault too. But the 200-week moving average, people kind of forget that, but it takes like a 10 sigma event to break the 200-week moving average, right? It's very uncommon that we dip below that, and that's trending upwards steadily. I think it's at 30 something now, but you have some crypto analysts saying, well, we're going to go to 20k, but that's far below 200-week moving average. So it would take some massive scandal, FTX level times 3 to push us down there, and I don't think that's possible at this point. Basically every indicator is signaling that people need to move out of fiat into Bitcoin, right? Like the debt GDP ratios, that's going up. The money printing is going up. The money supply is increasing. All of this stuff is increasing at the same time that Bitcoin is becoming more robust, more resilient, and we're getting the halving in less than 3 months now. So it's setting up for a very bullish takeoff of Bitcoin. And I think this is what's going to trigger that Omega candle that I've been talking about. But you've also been doing a lot of analysis as well. I think you posted about the ETF, so I'm curious to hear what you think.
Well, I think they're a big deal. I think they're just going to take time for, the people who they're really meant for, I guess, or like the financial advisors, pension funds, endowments, some of these big institutional investors. It's going to take time for them to even wrap their heads around Bitcoin. But now you have these large financial firms who are, inadvertently, I would say, advertising for Bitcoin itself, but they're just trying to make money off their ETF products. But it's just going to get more and more of these people who manage trillions and trillions of dollars more knowledgeable about Bitcoin. And then I just think about that graph where the more knowledgeable you become, the greater percent of your net worth you put into Bitcoin. And so I think that's going to happen on a different level than we've seen in previous cycles. And these ETFs are just this new top of funnel. So I do think they're a really big deal long term. I think short term, we're just seeing a lot of volatility. I think already you had spot market depth pretty low after the FTX collapse and all the contagion there just isn't that much Bitcoin. So you should expect a lot of volatility, especially if more demand comes up. And that's going to probably go both ways. But over the long term, that trend is clear. And I think it's going to be a big wave. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, that's just my thoughts on the ETFs. I just think they're really bullish. But of course, like real spot Bitcoin, I think, as a community, we have to like get people to understand why Bitcoin itself is important to hold and why there's different trade-offs for an ETF, like giving up, your sovereignty and having somebody else hold the Bitcoin for you. Like we can go through it again. There's no fees with holding spot Bitcoin, yada, yada, yada. And building tools as a community, like, Aqua Wallet is one perfect example, like tools where people can easily self-custody, make it more functional, make it better UX, UI. I think that's really important.
Yeah, well, I think ETFs go after a different market. I'm sure there are some high net worth Bitcoiners that are possibly divesting into it so they can leverage in the TradFi system, because now you can borrow against it easily, right? If it's a ETF product. I think it's also for estate planning, because if it's sitting in the ETF, then it's easier it's minimizing some risk of single point of failure if something happens to get hit by a bust or whatever. So possibly we're seeing that kind of diversification happen with Bitcoiners, but by and large, the ETFs are marketed towards boomers, pension funds, institutions, even other companies to hold. And I think that has yet to really hit the market. Once we see the pension fund money trickling into the ETFs, and they take time to decide, right? But that simple act of pensions buying Bitcoin is going to trigger this massive supply shock and demand surge, and it's going to happen very rapidly, because there's this sort of a weird thing. Maybe you can call it maybe it is the Veblen effect. But as the thing becomes more valuable, the more people want it. But it's gonna the pension funds coming in is going to drive the price up, and that's going to signal to other pension funds. So I don't know if it's a Veblen signal or what, but there's got to be some new terminology that we create here. But as the Bitcoin price goes up, more and more people are going to start looking at this. And then you have this sort of threshold at which we cross gold market cap, which indicates to the world that this is the new gold. And I've called that the Veblen threshold. But that's sort of an anchoring point at which you don't want gold anymore. This is gold, and you need gold, and that puts us on the same footing as the demand for gold for nation states, because their treasuries are still accumulating gold. A lot of countries like China are rapidly trying to get gold and buy a lot of gold, so now they need to look at Bitcoin.
Central bank purchasing of gold is hitting records like for the last couple of years, every year. And I just saw something about China actually, where their stock market's in trouble right now. It's been crashing. The real estate prices have been crashing, and they're actually turning to gold and even Bitcoin. There's more demand and peer-to-peer trading happening compared to previous years. It's huge jump up in trading volume in Bitcoin, just peer-to-peer transaction volume, which is really interesting, because they're like turning to hard money alternatives as their traditional stores of value, which is stocks and real estate, are collapsing on them.
Yeah, but the best indicator for China is really to look at Hong Kong, and you're seeing like 3, maybe 4 now, spot ETFs being produced and going to market soon, and that essentially is allowing mainland Chinese money to access Bitcoin and legitimate institutional product. So the tides are really turning, and Bitcoin is becoming that reserve asset of the world. So the question is when it happens, and I think when that happens, it's going to be explosive. It's not going to be this slow, gradual, plodding trek upwards. It's going to happen as a step function where we just go up very rapidly to 100, and then from 100 you go very rapidly again to 500, and so on.
Well, I think the animal spirits take over too when you cross those like psychological levels, like 100,000. I think it's going to get kind of stupid in terms of the mainstream media coverage, and it's going to be everywhere, right?
I just watched the GameStop documentary on Netflix like a couple of days ago, because it was like the anniversary, and I never really got into that. But it's funny, like looking at what happened there, and the fact that you could stop trading and crush the whole movement. That just can't happen with Bitcoin. There can be no removal of the buy button. So, and there's no one to call up and blame because it's decentralized. So it just, I think you can just see what happens. Imagine GameStop without the removal of the buy button, and without any funny business from Robinhood or Citadel.
Yeah, because they
What
just
would
halted
happen?
trading, right? They just halted trading at GameStop.
Yeah,
Robinhood just removed the buy button.
yeah.
I remember
So
that.
Corey, if you're listening, you better not remove the buy button on Swan, or else we're gonna come after
Well,
you.
there's no sell button, so
Yeah.
I wanted to touch. One of the metrics that you had on that tweet. I don't know if Jacob, you could throw that back up real quick. Is Tether USDT AUM? Now they just had an announcement today. I mean, Tether's just they brought in like $6 billion in profits in 2023, which is absurd. Like it puts it in like, top 200 profitable countries in the world or something like that. Companies. It's just wild. But one of the things like you can't really argue is that stablecoin adoption is huge across the world. And I'm wondering, Andre, like, is stablecoins popular in Madeira at all? And do you see it as like, people want
Not as
dollars?
much, not as much as and
Yeah.
Samson is way more knowledgeable about this than me. I think there are a lot in demand in the more, I don't like the word, but underdeveloped countries like Venezuela and Argentina and so on, and Africa,
Gotcha.
all of Africa, because the dollar is very, very appreciated over there, of course, because even with all the troubles, it's much more stable than their own, shitty coins, fiat coins that they have there. Just we have, for example, the country that I have more relationships with is Venezuela, because we have a large Madeiran community there. And I am collecting bills, actually. Charlie, that works for F.R.E.E, has been giving me
Like
these little
hyperinflated
pieces
bills,
of paper that it's worth nothing.
bolivars.
Literally. Actually, we're doing a funny thing for the conference with the bills.
Hey, I
And
saw in Venezuela they're making like bags out of the bolivar, right?
That's
I think
utility.
you should contract them to make swag bags
I
for
can
the out of the
no,
bolivar.
this was an idea for just for a gift for the attendees. I can say it. Actually, it's gonna be cool. But I asked Charlie, because he's from Venezuela, and actually, Charlie has a great story of its own. He's the first official hire of F.R.E.E. He's a Venezuelan, and he escaped Venezuela with Bitcoin in his head with his mother, which is
Really?
fantastic. Yeah, it's amazing to see. And this is exactly the stories that these privileged people in Europe need to understand, that they don't. They really, really don't. It's most people are like, oh, well, why do you need that? We have, MBWay, which is a local payment provider, whatever. They don't really understand the use cases. They don't. But stable coins are not as used here, of course, as in those other countries, because we have the euro and it's considered more stable and not necessary, I guess, to flee to the dollar as other countries have that need. And I think it's also mixed, and Samson knows it, of course, it's also mixed with the volatility of Bitcoin, that for people who are not able to use Bitcoin as a reserve, they want to use it for the day-to-day life needs, right? I think dollar or a stable coin is very, very helpful, of course, in their case. So we don't see it a lot here.
Okay.
Here is more for the reserves and the savings and so on so far. But I would like to say that I think that I own several businesses, and so I have a lot of relations with government and tax authorities and banks and so forth. But today, for the first time in my life, I funded a new company with Bitcoin only, on a Bitcoin
Really?
standard. And I can tell you that I'm not a very technical guy, but I think Bitcoin is developing so well that it's actually now very easy to use, not that hard to use. We funded the company. We sat down together. We opened up a new multi-sig wallet. We created all the files. We funded the company. We made our first payment. No paperwork, no one to tell us where did this money come from, who are you paying, and immediately when you realize this, I was leaving I was leaving the place and thinking, Jesus Christ, when you look at the mess that the fiat system and the banking system makes you do to create a new company, or to send a payment to the other side of the world, that, you know, someone in a branch in the mainland needs to sign and ask you where this money is coming to. They are so, sorry, I was going to say a swear word. They
There
are
you go.
completely trashed, man. It's not going to, it's so much better that it will eventually, you know, it's the world, basically.
Mm.
Well
That is awesome. I love hearing that about the creation of businesses and how Bitcoin makes that easier. That makes me extremely bullish.
Yes.
I think Alex Epstein, he's an energy expert, was just on the show, and he was talking about what's held nuclear energy back, and he's like, it's just straight up red tape, regulations, paperwork. Like, it just
Yep.
makes it so difficult to start businesses, and that's just such a bullish story that you just told for me in my mind. That's so cool.
This Alex Epstein, right?
That's
Yes.
Alex Epstein. Yes, yes, he's a good guy. He was just on the show. Well, I think that might be a good place to stop. I really enjoyed this conversation with you guys both. I'll leave you guys with some closing comments. You know, check out Bitcoin Atlantis is one thing I would just say. You know, go to bitcoinatlantis.com if you're interested in going. I think it's going to be a great event, and all three of us will be there. So if you want to say hi to us in person, but I'll throw it to Samson. Let people know where to find you guys, and also if you just have any closing comments about what we talked about today, feel free to just throw it out there.
Sure. I'm on Twitter, Noster Exelion, and if you're interested in Jan3 and nation state adoption, you can search us at jan3.com, and our website is jan3.com. Aqua Wallet, we just launched that Jan 3rd this year, and it's a Bitcoin stablecoin wallet and Layer 2 wallet, and you can learn more at Aqua Bitcoin on Twitter or aquawallet.io online. And I guess for Madeira's conference, the Bitcoin Atlantis, André, I'm writing a children's book called "There's No Second Best." It's like, you know, what's the best dessert? Ice cream. There is no second best. You know, what's the best playtime outside? It's at the park. There's no second best playtime. And then, of course, it ends with, you know, what's the best second best crypto asset? There is no second best. So I think you can ask Sailor if he wants to read that at the kids stage to all the kids.
We should. Yeah, we should.
I'm just kidding. There's no book.
Perfect.
But if he wants to do it, I'll write it.
We're gonna get somebody illustrating that.
Yeah.
Andre, where can people find you, man?
Well, I'm not very good on PsyOps, so I just use my name everywhere. I'm at André Loja on Twitter, but of course, you know, you can find at F.R.E.E.org, which is the Twitter of the organization, and at Bitcoin Atlantis for the conference. If you're interested to know more of the conference and all the satellite events, the speakers and whatnot, just go to bitcoinatlantis.com and you'll get all the information there. Subscribe to the newsletter. I think that it's the most important. We send regular updates, and we would love to have you here. I think it's going to be a great week in Madeira.
Couldn't agree more. Well, thanks for joining the show, guys. Fascinating conversation. Thanks for pushing Bitcoin adoption from the grassroots level, bottom up. I think you guys are on the right track, and we're grateful that you're educating these people on Bitcoin and pushing its adoption. So thanks for joining. Appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Thank you. See you soon.
Yeah. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that show. I mean, I just find it fascinating to be in those positions like these guys are, where they're actually speaking to people in power at the government level and really pushing the orange pill on them and getting them to understand not just how this can be an investment, but also a technology that could bring jobs to the country, as well as improve their standing on the global stage. I spoke with somebody from El Salvador, and they were like, one of the biggest factors of us adopting Bitcoin is just our image has completely changed in the global community. It went from one where it was focused on our crime to one that we are embracing new technologies. And that in itself is a huge step forward for their country. And I think anybody who embraces Bitcoin will see similar benefits. So I hope you guys enjoyed that show. Check out Bitcoin Atlantis. Again, you can use the code SIGNAL for 10% off tickets if you're interested in making the trip. I'll be there. So if you're going to be there, make sure you come and say hello. And then Pacific Bitcoin. That's the other festival that I'm really excited about, of course, brought to you by Swan. And that is happening in next October. And so go check it out. You can use the promo code Signal to get 10% off. And if you pay with Bitcoin, you can get 21% off right here. It's another excellent list of speakers, and it's seriously one of the best times in terms of Bitcoin conferences. I mean, everyone's just in such a great mood. It's a smaller, good size event where you can actually speak to some of these people that you might look up to, some of these thought leaders. You can have one-on-one conversations with them, which I think is unique. So go check out Pacific Bitcoin if you're interested. And thank you so much for listening to the show. Please follow this channel if you haven't already. That helps us just kind of expand our reach and reach more people and teach them about Bitcoin. Like, comment, let me know what you think. And we got another excellent episode in line next week with the prescient and also very intelligent Turda Meester. So I'm very excited for that one. So check it out next week, and I will see you then. I am out.